This is a Cybertruck, and this is my Cyber Camper. Over the last 2 months, we've been building this out of a $600 Harbor Freight trailer. Let me show you how we did it.
It all started with a trip to Harbor Freight to buy a trailer that had to be assembled like IKEA furniture.
This trailer has a 1,700-pound weight rating, and it was the best one they had available at Harbor Freight.
But let's skip straight to the fun stuff and start building a subfloor. The dimensions of the trailer are 4 foot by 8 foot, so a sheet of plywood fit perfectly on top. However, there are bolts sticking out of the top of the trailer, so I have to find them on the piece of wood, drill a hole, and make it fit flush. Now, something super important about the subfloor is it has to be weatherproof to withstand the elements of the open road, so let's talk about how I'm going to do that.
When it comes to weatherproofing the bottom of the trailer, I'm going to be using this Red Guard, which is a waterproofing membrane. I used it in the shower of my personal van that I live in. I think it'll work really well with keeping water and rot away from this trailer, and we can keep this thing alive for a long time.
I know what you're thinking. It's called Red Guard, but it's pink. Well, when it's dry, it turns red, and that lets you know that it's time for a second coat. After a couple of layers of Red Guard, it was time for an extra layer of support by using some black exterior paint just to make it look better. Once the paint was dry and the subfloor was ready to be installed, I threw down some liquid nail for some added security and then screwed it down with as many screws as I could.
I'm beefing up the subfloor with an internal wooden frame, that way we can add insulation throughout the middle and we can have warm tootsies while we're in the middle of nowhere camping. Once the frame and insulation is finished, it's time to cap it off with another 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of plywood, and we're good to go.
So now that we have a subfloor, it is time to frame stuff. I'm going to be using 2x2s because I have this weird structure that has multiple different pitches, and I even had to use the Pythagorean theorem today, which that's the first time since high school. My teacher told me I would use it in life, but I never believed her until this moment.
Framing out the lower half of the Cyber Camper is actually pretty easy. It's the upper half that's been giving me some trouble. I had to use the Pythagorean theorem of a squared plus b squared equals c squared to figure out the pitch and the angle and the run, and my brain hurts.
So if you're watching this and you're still in school, you need to pay attention to your teachers because you never know when you're actually going to need this stuff. It's been 20 plus years since I learned that formula right there. I never thought I would need it until today, 20 plus years later, so pay attention in school. So this one piece of wood right here took me about 30 to 45 minutes to figure out all of the angles and the bevels and the weird things. I've never framed anything like this. It's like you're framing a house. You have all these like weird cuts right here. So there's like a cut up, cut over. This has an angle, a bevel. It has everything. It is very difficult. I don't recommend. So if you're learning how to do this for me, don't do that. I'm just figuring it out as well. The framing is about 98% done. This wall right here is going to be a lifesaver right now because it left me a big enough gap under here to slide the interior walls in, which is what I'm going to be working on right now.
Now that the framing is finished, it's time to start working on our interior walls. There's going to be a lot of measuring and a lot of cutting and a lot of test fitting just to make sure that every single angle is going to fit properly. After the test fit of the walls is complete, it's time to rip them out, sand them down, get them nice and smooth and ready for 5,000 nails and probably 10,000 more nails. I'm using liquid nail to secure the walls to the framing, as well as those 10,000 nails that I was talking about earlier.
Now it's time to cut some holes for the door and the skylights. As Nick would like to say, the finger blender time. Okay, so I think I messed up. This hole right here is 22 by 22. It's supposed to be 30 by 22. So I have to rip these out, which they're glued. They're nailed like 50 times on each side, and I'm not happy about it.
I don't get to use hammers while building very often, so anytime I get a chance to, I'm very excited.
All right, I got these interior walls in. They're glued and nailed up with like 10,000 nails, so it is very sturdy, but it's time to start working on this partition wall to separate the bed from the kitchen, and then I'm going to start working on the kitchen by the end of the day. So I'm excited about that because things are starting to look like something.
Now it's time for a little pre-wiring action, which usually I'm not a big fan of. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the easiest time I've ever had doing pre-wiring because I'm not having to force it through metal cavities inside of a van, but instead just drilling holes and I know exactly where to put the wire.
So if you noticed, there's probably 6,000 nail holes in here, so I've got a lot of this stuff, and I'm just going to be doing that for the rest of the morning. Yo, what up?
This thing looks so sick, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty good. 6'4". That was the first trip.
Almost dying on my way up.
How'd you almost die?
I'll show you the tires. I guess the canter on the wheels was off, so like the tread.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I probably should die on. We made it.
Well, it made it.
One piece.
What you got going on today? You gonna help me out?
Another time.
Yeah? Okay.
Help me finish the rest of it.
That'd be sick.
It's that time to reveal how I'm gonna make these walls nice and smooth and get rid of all of those seams and cracks.
Every nook and cranny is going to have some Bondo. That way I can have the nicest, smoothest walls that's going to last because this stuff shouldn't crack as much as wood filler. So I'm getting in there before it gets too hot. And there's no airflow in there, so I'm going to be sweaty. I don't want to sand today because if I get sweaty and then I sand it all down, I'm going to be gross. And I don't want to. Or do I?
This is the first time I've ever used Bondo in any of my projects. I really enjoyed this stuff, but I also didn't enjoy it because I had to wear a mask for about 2 days straight while I was installing it and sanding everything down, and it was the most messy I have ever been. I ruined my favorite hat, so if you have a hat that you think I would like, go ahead and send it to me. To add an extra layer of security to the waterproofing of the interior of the camper, I added caulking around the edges, smoothed it out, and it's ready for paint. This is the part where Ryan got really excited because we were measuring out to figure out how to lay everything out inside of our kitchenette. If you watch Ryan's videos, you know he loves to cook, and I can attest that he is an incredible chef. So this is going to be a great kitchen. One of the biggest challenges of building this kitchen is trying to figure out how to fit so many things into a small space. We want a refrigerator, a large sink, a stove, and a lot of storage.
So I'm using the same sheet of wood for the countertop that I used in the Honda Elements. It is 3/4 inch bamboo. It's like $350 a sheet. I'm gonna make sure I use it until it's gone.
I also couldn't let Kyle leave me completely out of the process of building, so I decided to throw in some floating LED shelves. Also, this is Ryan talking during this part, but yeah.
As you all know, cabinetry is my favorite part of any build, and this is actually a very fun project because of the complexity and how I have to fit everything into such a small space. I'm really looking forward to this one. There are many different ways to make drawer bodies. Today I'm going to be using a curve cutting method, which means I'm using my table saw to cut slats throughout the bottom of the board, and then I'm going to slide a 1/4 inch piece of plywood in the bottom for the base.
The kitchen's starting to come together. We've got our doors. We have a drawer. This has 3 functions. So when you're in a small space, you got to think about all the different functions. So not only when you pull it out, is there going to be like silverware, whatever is in there. This on top is a bamboo countertop, which can be used as a cutting board. But also, if you set it on top, pull the drawer all the way out, you can set your stove on top of here and have all of the counter space in the back for whatever you need to store back there. Small spaces, big thoughts, big dreams. Let's get to the next project.
Once the kitchen was fully complete, it was time to take it all apart, sand it up, get it ready for paint, and it's going to be beautiful and dark. The tip of the trade here is to use steel wool to sand down poly, that way it makes a nice smooth finish. Lighting in the kitchen area is super important, so I'm going to be adding a cool white light underneath these shelves that Ryan made. For the backsplash in the kitchen, I wanted something stone to match the gray, but this one actually had something even cooler in it. It has a stainless steel strip, which makes it match everything that we're doing with the Cyber Camper. Now that the backsplash is installed, it's time to install the shelves with the lighting, install some switches, and see if this thing works. And it didn't work, so time to rewire it. Second time's the charm, let there be light. And just like that, the kitchen is complete.
It's time to start installing some fun stuff now, and I went to Walmart to find a like 27-inch computer monitor because we're going to be throwing in a workstation in here, but I found this for $88. This is a 32-inch TV, smart TV. I'm going to install it.
I had to reinforce the framing in the back wall with more 2x2s in order to support the weight of the TV.
It's time for some of the fun stuff now, which is lighting. So if you remember in Ryan's mini truck, we did this exact thing. We took the lighting and pretty much ran it all the way around the edges. So basically this 1/2-inch strip goes there, then a light goes right underneath it, and then this full inch strip sits right over it, causing indirect lighting. It just points down, not directly in your eyes. It's pretty nice, so let's get to it.
Instead of sitting around and watching paint dry, I'm going to be installing some USB and USB-C ports all over this place. There are 3 of them, which is way more than we will ever need. After checking the paint, it was still wet, so it was time to install our flooring. This is the same exact flooring we put in our Honda Element, and it's actually really easy to use. Now that the flooring's installed, it's time to start thinking about storage. So I'm going to be building an electrical cabinet that doubles as a storage for clothes or whatever you may have. Since the Cyber Camper has so many different shapes and angles, I wanted to incorporate that into this cabinet as well. While adding a little bit more space for storage, I decided to build these little wooden cinder block looking things as cabinetry for decorations and plants and whatever you may have for the front of the house.
And it's time for electrical. We are keeping it simple, just like the Honda Element and Ryan's mini truck. We're going to be using a portable power station. So it's a solar generator. You can run solar into it, which we will have. All you need is this, a 12-volt fuse block. And then in this little area, the cigarette port, you're going to put in a adapter that's going to put the 12-volt right into this. And then all of your other things, your lights, your accessories are going to be plugged into that, except the 120 is going to be plugged into one of these right here. I can't tell which one it is, but we're going to be plugged into those, and it's super easy, so let's go.
This is a beginner-friendly electrical system, and I highly recommend it. It only took about 30 minutes to get it done, and everything works really well.
The ceiling up here has too much dead space. It's just too much gray, so I'm going to add some really cool lighting features, and let's see what we can come up with.
Lighting is probably my second favorite part of every job because it can make or break a space, and you can be as creative with it as you want. With this lighting feature, I originally wanted to use RGB lights like I did in the Honda Element, but just like that video, I was getting too much trouble with it, so I went with a 2-color light using purple and cool white. The
lights ready to be installed, and this was my honest reaction.
All right, here we go. I guess I saw something. Oh my gosh.
It's time to start moving on to something super important that kind of scared me a little bit because I had never built a door in my entire life. And not only does it have to be a door, it has to be waterproof for the weather and the elements. So this was actually quite terrifying. The thickness of this door has to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in order for the door and lock to work. I sandwiched a 3/4 inch piece of plywood between 1/4 inch pieces of plywood with squares cut into the middle so I could add some insulation. I'm using weather stripping that I found at Home Depot. It has adhesive on the back of it, it's easy to use, and it should keep all of the water out of the house. It's almost time to start adding the wall panels, but first, we have to do something super important, kind of boring. Let's do the insulation. For the lower half of the camper, I'm using styrofoam insulation, but for the top with all of the weird angles, I'm going to be using a spray foam. Once the spray foam was cured, it was time to shave it down to shape. For the roof of the camper, I'm using 1/4 inch plywood, and it will be waterproof just like the base of the camper with RedGuard and exterior black paint.
I'm going to be painting all of these exposed 2x2 black because we're using the same panels that you guys know Ryan used here. So they're aluminum panels, and we're going to be sticking them to them with some insane double-sided tape. It works really well. Obviously, he has driven that 600 miles. This should last even longer because it's a trailer, no engine.
The reason behind painting the frame is that the 3M adhesive sticks best to painted surfaces.
The outside is painted. We're ready to go for the panels, and Ryan is here. He's going to help me because obviously this is a 2-person job, and he actually knows what he's doing because he did it on his mini truck.
So if you haven't seen my channel before, I built out that mini truck that's right there, the Japanese one, which I'm sure you've seen a lot of times in Kyle's video. But I use the same kind of panels on the mini truck that we're going to be putting on the outside of this, except these ones are going to be brushed steel. We're going to put tape on all of these parts that Kyle painted black, and then just slap on the sheets, roll it on, and hope it sticks. And this is the tape we're using. I put it on my mini truck, and I drove it all the way up to San Francisco from San Diego. None of the walls fell off, so this stuff is super strong. It's called 3M VHB tape. It's used for commercial vehicles for putting on sidings on semis and stuff, so it should be strong enough. Hold up the walls on the side of our camper.
One of the most important things about this project was making it look just like the Cyber Camper, and that meant using something that looked like stainless steel on the outside.
So these panels that we're using for the outside of the Cybertruck, they're called dye bond. So essentially on one side you have this nice brushed stainless steel that gets fingerprints just like the Cybertruck, but it is really rigid. So on the inside there's this plastic material, and then the other side it's got the same stainless steel finish as this side. Since these are super rigid panels and don't really have that much flex, in order to get them to bend up over the angles on the Cybertruck camper, and we're gonna put a kerf relief cut in this to hopefully give it enough flexibility to bend over on one side. So we're gonna cut into the silver on one side
and it's going to stay one solid sheet on this side, and hopefully we can cut enough into this plastic to give it enough bend to bend over. Dude, this looks so good.
Once we got the first panel done, we went to the other side, repeated the process, and then I moved on to the front. With all of the wall panels up, this thing is finally starting to look like something. Now I need to cut a hole in the wall for the door and put the window in.
Well, the time has come to do the back hatch. I'm not looking forward to it, but I've got to figure it out. So I'm going to do a lot of math and some figuring out and some weird stuff. So let's go. So I just made this little piece right here that's going to fit snug underneath that. I'll pull that down, and then I'll run some weather stripping right here. That way, when it closes down, it'll seal it out. So this tape will act as a seal so nothing gets that way.
I'm using a hurricane hinge for the back hatch. It's just something that I found all over the forums that people had used and really enjoyed. The hardest part about building the back hatch was connecting the two pieces that I built separately, but what I did was find out that the angle of the door was 11 degrees and I built 4 L-shaped connectors. Another challenge to building the back hatch was running electrical wires for the trailer lighting as well as the over cabinet lights.
So we have a door. It's right here. It's fully installed, but it won't open because this is hitting all of these weird angles that we have in there. So my idea now, make the door slimmer, pack that out, and just make the door slide in there. Then we'll put the metal over the top, and that'll help us with weatherproofing, and voila. The door that was such a struggle for me is almost done. It's working. It's functioning. All we have to do now is put some wood filler in it, sand it, make it look all nice, waterproof it, stain it, put a door handle in it, and install it again. And hopefully it's just temporary. It's not just temporary. Currently it is, so I'm going to make it not so temporary.
Now that the wall panel and the light is installed, it's time to add some plexiglass to cover up that light, and I highly recommend not using a table saw to cut plexiglass. It's not fun.
I'm getting pretty close to having this thing finished. There are some small details that I need to go through and touch up, basically, but I'm about to start working on the plumbing, and something I really don't want to do, but I might have to do. On these top folds here, the bend is such a large degree of an angle that I may have to put screws lining that thing. It may take away from some of the aesthetics, but it's got to be functional, so better that way than flying off in the middle of the highway.
Now it's time to do our super simple plumbing system.
Messed up the first hole, had to make another one, so now I got to fill this, probably with some spray foam.
I'm using a USB chargeable water faucet, and this thing works so well and it is easy to install. I'm also using a 5-gallon freshwater tank.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to throw some screws in here and ruin the aesthetic of the cleanness, but safety over aesthetics, I guess. Doesn't look too bad, I don't think.
In order for this to look more like a Cybertruck, we need to get rid of this goofy red and make it black. Next up, it's time to seal off everything with some caulking. I wanted the rear end to look a little bit more aggressive, so I'm going to add a bumper using a 2x6. Once the bumper was installed, I could add the locking mechanism. That was another fun project. We're adding more lighting to the kitchen so that you can literally see anything and everything that you're going to be cooking, cleaning, whatever's out there, you can see it. Now it's time to install the metal on the entry door and get that door installed. Now it's time to add solar to our Cyber Camper. We will have a 100-watt panel that will charge our battery system. Something I couldn't avoid was this crack right here, so my solution was to fill it with caulking and then put a piece of aluminum over the top of it just to cap it. And just like that, we are all finished. Now all we have to do is clean her up, put the bed inside, and get her ready for its maiden voyage. We ended up renting a U-Haul truck just because we watched Whistle and Diesel's video about how the Cybertrucks, they're pretty much getting ripped out of the frame, so we didn't want to chance it. And here's the moment you've all been waiting for. A Cybertruck with the Cyber Camper. Beautiful.
And there she is, all finished. The Cyber Camper, 100 watts of solar. Interior sleeping space up to 6'4", powered by an Anchor power station with all of the crazy lighting, 32-inch TV. The kitchen, we have our fridge, sink, stove, everything you need to live off grid.
Guys, we made it. It's finished. It's here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you can be notified the next time I post a video. Thank you guys so much. I cannot express how much I am so grateful for you guys. I love you all. I'll see you in the next video.